Okay, it's about 7:03 p.m. Central Standard Time, Tuesday, April the 19th, 2022, and welcome to week number 3, already the halfway point coming up for the J280 Contemporary Issues in Criminal Justice. And you guys know who I am, but I'll say it anyway. My name is Richard Wright. And so I'm going to take some time today to go over the assignments for the week. Just want to remind many of you guys, and you know who I'm talking about, that it is too important to make sure that you follow APA, the requirements of APA. And you know, citations in the body, references at the end, a cover page, and a reference page, cover page, double space, Roman 12, and those are the main requirements that I look for. There are others as well, but those are the ones that can really nail you. The rubric makes it quite clear, very important, and then also importantly, please run your papers through Grammarly. Check the plagiarism box, because that's what I do when I grade the assignments. So let's get into the topic here. All right, so let's go to the grade book so you can see. Okay, I've got 11 more papers to grade for week 2. Those will be completed by Friday or in the next couple of days. And then this week, we're dealing with an infographic. Be sure when you do your infographic that you do it in a Word document form. And I'll talk about that when I get to the actual assignment. We're going to talk about professional writing, one of my favorite topics. And then, of course, your live classroom lecture, phrase, or a word that we will do. So let's get to the calendar so we can see where we are on that. Let's move that over a little bit. Okay, let's click on month. Let's do it again. I don't know. Oh, there it is. Okay. So today is the 19th. Initial post is due tonight, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. Your lecture, your reply post due Saturday the 23rd. And then your written assignment is due Sunday the 24th, along with your live classroom lecture phrase. Okay, and then reminding you that May is approaching very rapidly, pretty fast. That is, and it's interesting, I have a lecture for May 3rd. I might work around that and do that earlier. I'm not really sure yet, and the reason is because I don't know what's being planned, but that's my birthday. I will be 72 on that date, but at any rate, you'll get it probably earlier. And then your live lecture again will take place on Friday. So that's going to be a busy week for us coming up. That's 2 weeks now. That's not next week. All right. And then the course ends, of course, on the 10th of May. And all written assignments are due for that day. All right. But we'll work out that 3rd of May lecture. All right. Let's get back into the course. Let's come down and let's look at the announcements for this week. Week 3 announcement. Let's move that down. Professional communication skills. And we're going to talk about that, the verbal, as well as nonverbal communication, some barriers that you might face in written communication, and the very much important thing of getting that accurately done. And then just to remind you of the link where your lecture takes place, discussion assignment, professional writing, and then that, of course, is due, as I said, tonight, and then reply Saturday, and then your infographic um, due Sunday. Okay, and then adversity is a springboard to success. You know what that is all about. But pay close attention to the rubric and the lessons tab and what things that I cover during the week. All right. Let's go to the actual week assignment. So let's start out by going over the written assignment. So let's get a good feel for it. So you're going to read this whole paragraph and this paragraph. And then you're going to create an infograph or chart showing both sides. Now, keep in mind what I'm saying. A chart and an infograph is the same thing, basically. So you don't have to use that uh, infograph system that takes you out of doing a Word document. It's got to be a Word document. So the infograph showing both sides of the rights afforded by the Fourth and Fifth Amendment and the importance of protecting these rights. Remember, it must be in a Word document, and also remember that it does not have a specific number of pages. However, you have to adequately um, address the issues relating to the Fourth and Fifth Amendment. Um, and you know what the Fourth Amendment is, unreasonable search and seizures, and then the Fifth Amendment, interrogation. All right, so there are many cases under the Fourth Amendment, but the Fifth Amendment leading case is, anybody know what the leading case for the Fifth Amendment is? Landmark case? Know what that would be? Came out, I believe, in 66. You have the right to remain silent. That's part of it. It's Miranda versus Arizona, the Miranda warnings. That's the leading. There are other cases as well, but that's the leading case. Be sure when you cite your cases, I remind you, please use the official court case citation at least once at the beginning. You don't have to use it all the way through. But whenever you do it, please don't cite Oyez, don't cite fine law, or any of those things. Please cite the cases appropriately, and you cannot complete this assignment without citing the cases. All right. Let's get to the rubric. Of course, we operate on mastery. So the Fourth and Fifth Amendment may limit law enforcement. So you're going to give a clear and comprehensive analysis of how the Fourth and 15th Amendment may limit the efforts of law enforcement. The importance of the amendment and why it's so important. The Fourth and the Fifth Amendment. Clear and comprehensive. That means citations in the body, reference at the end. Same thing, disadvantages and advantages of both those amendments. And then make sure it's an infographic or a chart showing both sides of the rights afforded by the Fourth and Fifth Amendment is in clear and comprehensive form. please have a reference page. If you don't have any citations, you're going to end up over here. If you don't have the proper court case citation, you're probably going to lose about 15% of your grade, and you'll end up in proficiency and maybe end up with an 85 as a grade. Okay, so if you make sure that you do cite the cases officially, because I speak about this constantly. Many of you have been in other classes with me where if you've had to cite cases, you know how I am about that. And why am I like that? Because of the fact that I'm preparing you for operating as a professional. One time a student said to me that, they didn't say it to me, but they said it in the evaluation. They said, one of the criticisms I have of Professor Wright is that he grades us as if we're professionals. My dean laughed, and everybody that saw that comment laughed, because they said that's the goal, that's the object. And it's not as if you wouldn't know, because I give you the answer to that and how to do that. Remember, always aim for your best. Strive to be the best. That's how I got into this great school on my shirt to become a lawyer. I didn't go because I was half-stepping. I went and was able to get in and graduate. So excited about it. And I talk about it a whole lot with my students because I want you to shoot higher. Maybe you can go to Harvard, as some people call it, or Yale, or one of those other schools. We're called the Harvard of the Midwest. But the fact of the matter is this credential of going to this law school has launched my career in all areas at a high level. And that's what I bring to the table for you guys. And that's what I want you to be. I want you to look at that as a basis. I want you to be better than what Professor Wright did, and shoot for the highest level. That's why I focus on the rubric the way that I do. Okay. So the infographic, make sure you get that done properly. The discussion assignment deals with professional writing. So in a post of at least 250 words, you're going to discuss the importance of writing that is accurate, concise, factual, professional, and unbiased. All criminal justice professionals provide written documentation that can make or break their careers. Let me say it again. That can make or break your career. Writing that contains errors in mechanics, such as grammar or spelling, can diminish credibility. Discuss in your post something I'm going to talk about, the likely outcome of a criminal justice professional, whether it's a lawyer, probation, parole, police officer, corrections, submitting written information that is incorrect or incomplete information. I'll talk about that and give some examples. Research and cite at least one source in your post that examines the importance of professional writing in law enforcement. And then in your response, a different issue that a peer might have. Okay, so that's the discussion post. All right. Then your live classroom recording. Here, of course, this is where you'll find the link after we finish to this recording. And those you're here, as Josh is, will have a head start on that. All right. Then your live classroom, this is where you put your keyword or phrase that we will present concerning the issue or issues today. So we're going to deal with verbal and nonverbal communication, some communication barriers, and written communication. Okay, remind you that there's a student survey that we'd like you to complete. You don't have to complete that this week. You can even complete it next week. So let's talk about verbal and nonverbal communication. So let's talk about written communication. As you should be aware, it is probably 99.9% chance that any written communication that you have as a criminal justice professional could end up being an exhibit in a court of law, and that a judge or a jury will have the opportunity to hear that. And it is very, very important. As it says here, written documentation is the foundation from which judges and jurors make decisions about defendants' freedom and must therefore be factual, accurate, unbiased, and professional. Let me use those words. Factual, based on the facts of what's going on. Accurate, very accurate. Unbiased, and professional. Now, let me give you an example of situations that can occur in written communication. I made a career as a defense lawyer, and some of you may have heard this already, but it fits perfectly in our discussion today, where I would file my motions for discovery from the prosecution and receive police reports or other kind of reports that are written. But let's focus on police reports for the moment. Numerous times, I don't mean once or twice, I mean numerous times, as I receive reports, I've been able to take those reports and cross-examine the author of those reports. I remember one particular case where an individual had a simple error and they used I, the letter I, lowercase. And it was 2 or 3 times in the report. And so when I had to utilize a certain section, I would point out to the officer by asking, uh, is it true that your report says um, such and such and such? I, and I, the letter I is mentioned in the statement that I use. And I said, oh, and the I is lowercase. And the officer will say, yes, I authored that report, but I made an error because the I should be always capitalized. That's common knowledge. Judges, jurors, everybody knows that. Okay, you learn that, I don't know how far back in grammar school. Now, I undoubtedly knew that the person made a mistake, but I wanted to hear those words come out of their mouth. And as a defense attorney, those are words of um, joy, because it creates doubt. Even a little simple thing like that, because here's what happened. The officer that was questioned, or officers that were questioned and did that, actually um, began to unwind, and then I would be able to, as they say, come in on them really. Sometimes they would even lose their temper with me. It was okay because it wasn't personal, it was just business. But I'm trying to explain to you guys that the prosecution looks bad like that because the officer looks very unprofessional. You do not want to look unprofessional. That's why I'm teaching you guys. That's why we want you to follow instructions. That's why we're dogmatic about APA. That's why grammar and spelling is important to you guys in your grades here, because we want you to fix it here. Another example of an inaccuracy that was in a report that totally turned the case all the way around. I had a client, and I'll never forget this because we're in that month now, where he was charged with a crime, and I think it was a robbery case. I think it was robbery. And I don't remember whether it was armed or unarmed, but it was robbery. And I know it was a property crime. Well, anyway, in the report, they said that the date of the occurrence was April the 31st. April the 31st. Now, I had a big circle around that date. And I questioned the officer about it. And the officer said, yes, that's what the victim told me. I said, okay. And then I asked him, so are you saying then that the 31st was the date? Well, the state's attorney objected, says, objection, Your Honor, asked and answered. Well, I already knew that. But I had a jury that was listening now. And the judge says, okay, you made your point, move on. Yes, I did. And the judge actually helped me as well as the prosecution. So then the witness, the chief witness, the one who actually issued the statement, he gave me a hard time because I started asking him. I says, is it possible that this person was not the person that did this? And he said, no, I'm positive. And, he said, so I asked him some questions. So then I said, you told the police that it happened on April the 31st, and whatever year that was. He says, yeah. I says, are you sure that that was the date? He says, yes. Judge says, um, um, to stop prosecution again, fell in my trap and objected. Well, this is the second time that the jury had a chance to hear it. So I was done with that point. And I went on with some other issues that actually created some doubt. But what I'm trying to show you is how the written communication affected the case. So here we go to the end of the case. And as you know, each side has closing arguments. So yours truly had included in their closing argument, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you recall that officer so-and-so testified on the stand, as well as the chief witness, the eyewitness. He said that it happened on April the 31st. And I stopped right there and I said, ladies and gentlemen, when I was a kid, my grandmother taught me a poem. As soon as I said those words, the prosecutor jumped up. Objection, Your Honor, says, counsel is about to introduce into the record something that he learned as a kid. And the judge says, objection is overruled. It's closing argument. And the judge kind of was smiling. And so what I did, guys, was this. I'm just showing you. This is no little thing, but this is really how it works. I turned to the judge and says, thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and I looked at them. And then I turned and looked at counsel and counsel. The poem that I learned said to me, 30 days has September, April. And I got quiet and paused. April, June, and November. All the rest have 31 except the month of February. That's a fact. The judge knew where I was going. The prosecution even knew where I was going. And the jury definitely knew where I was going. And I used that in my argument and then some other points. the results, the jury believed that they could not find my client guilty beyond a reasonable doubt because of that error just sticking out like a sore thumb, even if my guy did it. The jury said we couldn't prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Some people might say, well, don't be distracted by that. Well, they brought the facts. I just reminded the jury of what they gave me as facts. Sure, it was a mistake. Sure, it was something that didn't exist, but that's the point. And so he was found not guilty. But there were other things too. He didn't do it anyway. Someone else they found out later did the crime and had the wrong guy. But anyway, just pointing out to you among the importance of the written communication and how it can make or break a case. And so because of the fact that I remind you again that police reports are read by officers, the officer's sergeant, prosecutors, judges, jurors, defense attorneys, caseworkers, probation and parole officers, doctors, insurance companies, social service agencies, crisis workers, and many others. Any mistake can make the officer appear incompetent and result in the officer's credibility being questioned by the trier of fact. So that's why I am grading you the way I grade you in your written assignments in criminal justice. I'm not picking on you. Okay. So that's, you got that point, the importance of it. But I spend a lot of time talking about a little simple concept like that. There are so many errors in there. I've even been able to ask questions like if a certain statement is made or presented by an expert or someone in written that says, where did you get that information? They didn't cite a source. Well, you know where I'm going with that one. And I've been able to utilize that. I'm just simply telling you, if you're professionally prepared, you're in good shape. Okay, let's move on. Interpersonal communication. So what is that? That involves both verbal and written communication. And we have to be able to speak verbally, of course. I mean, obviously, in the courtroom where you're going to testify, that's going to be verbal, all right? And says there are several main reasons why we communicate: to provide information, to exchange or present ideas and information, and to receive feedback. Sound like your papers that I grade, don't it? Put yourself in the role of a probation officer that documents the violations of a probationer, because you present a petition of violation, or VOP as we called it, before the judge. And or if the police officer is writing a narrative about an incident which he responded, like I referred to earlier. In both of these documents, the information presented could negatively impact the freedom of an individual. So the writing must be truthful, accurate, and free of errors. Because the verbal communication and the written communication can clash and create a problem and do what we call impeach you. In other words, discredit you in front of the trier of fact. So we're gonna have people from various communication backgrounds, the ability to be able to deal with. And we're gonna break it down in just a few minutes here. So when do you start dealing with professional communication skills? At the beginning. Did you not know that even your notes can be subjected to being to produce being produced with a motion for discovery. Professional communication, and I'll read it, begins with being able to interact with others one-on-one, face-to-face, and then pulling from that interaction all the factual data you need to write about it. So you have to be able to have it so that someone else can pick it up and read it and clearly understand it. If you are not a good writer, you're going to have a whole lot of problems down the road. Makes you very vulnerable, and it's important. So I'm not going to harp on this next paragraph because I've already kind of talked about that. The reasons for professional effective written communication, we already covered it, is to protect the rights as well as protect the justice professional's career, regardless of what area you work in. So it's important for you to understand that. I think we got that point. Let's talk about verbal and nonverbal communication for a little bit here. Two levels. Two levels. Verbal communication is speaking and writing. So it's not just from the mouth, but it also includes written. Okay? And we already talked about how the importance of accuracy is involved with that. But basically, verbal can be broken down into 5 primary areas. Here they are, right here. Think about this. Responding, reporting, interviewing, interrogating, and then bringing it back out in testimony. So those are the things that take place. You're going to respond, but how do you operate as a good verbal communication person? You have to listen. Active listening. Active listening, and I teach my students this, involves not focusing on doing something else, not double tasking, but focusing on the party that you're getting the information from. You know, you're going to have to be very careful about how you put your reports. It says you should avoid slang and keep verbal communication short and simple. And let me just say this, professional. I've seen too many people see movies and where there's interrogation by a police officer of a suspect, and they refer to as a piece of feces or something else. No, you got to be respectful. Any of you guys ever heard of Joe Friday? You ever heard of Joe Friday? Josh, have you ever heard of Joe Friday? Yes, you have. You heard of Dragnet? You've heard of Dragnet? Never heard of Dragnet? Okay. Tom Hanks was in a movie called Dragnet, where it came from a 50s police show called Dragnet. And a guy named Jack Webb actually was the original Joe Friday. Joe Friday was a police detective. And the police detective would question people, suspects, but he was very polite in how he questioned them. Check it out sometime, Google it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Well, Joe Friday actually presents the professional way that you should question a suspect or individual. You remain professional. Don't use your language condescending or in a negative way. Remember, you're supposed to be objective. And don't allow yourself to be pushed to a temper level, because that could backfire on you as well. Um, you have to be professional. You can't talk to someone in a way. I'm sure you saw Beverly Hills Cop with Eddie Murphy. Did you see that? See Beverly Hills Cop? Okay. Same kind of concept. Do you remember when the officers were questioning Eddie Murphy at the LA Police Department, and one of the officers actually got upset with Eddie and he struck him? You remember that? Okay. That is the kind of thing because the officer lost their professionalism in question. And if you go back and ever look at that, you'll see his cool was gone, resulted in him striking him. And if you remember what happened, the commander came and said, "Do you want to press charges against this officer for what he did?" Well, he said, "No, I'm not going to do that." My point being is that that's kind of like the idea I'm getting across is that you have to remain professional. I always have to remind my law enforcement people, and I was one of them, that when you question someone, you question them with the same way. Well, I guess it's a bad example, but I'll use it as the home plate umpire calling balls and strikes. The reason why I had to laugh when I said that is because they call sometimes balls strikes and strikes balls, but most of the time they get them right. But the point of the matter is that they're supposed to be calling them as they see them, but they maintain a professional level of how they conduct that job. Well, that's the same thing you have to do as well. All right, and you have to be very careful because that can come back and bite you. Nonverbal communication makes up 93% of the information in face-to-face situation. Body language, of nonverbal communication. You have to be able to read gestures, tone of voice, and facial expressions. Uh, it's important that the criminal justice professional understand how to read the body language as an indicator of deception or an impeding physical attack, they or some attempt to escape. You're out. I used to teach a class that was written in oral communication for law enforcement officers. I used to love that class, and I used to ask the question of my students. You're out in the field and you're asking the questions of someone, and the person that you're questioning, uh, you're looking at them. I mean, I know you're trying to write information, take information down, but at the same time, you see in their face that they're looking around, not necessarily behind you, but their eyes are looking to the right or to the left of you. So you should be able to pick something up about that. That's and if they drop their eyes when they're answering questions, that's usually a deceptive answer that's given or an evasive answer. But the looking around question, and you're out there, what is one of the things that you consider that might be taking place with the mind of that individual while they're providing information? Any ideas? Okay, I will give it to you then. They could be, yeah, okay. Um, let's put that in there. I think I know what you said. You said lies typically go through someone's head. Well, yeah, I know, but you don't know what's in their head, but you can see their expressions on their face. Uh, but if they're looking around and you're questioning them, is there a possibility they're looking for a way to get away or see in a way, think about uh, escaping? That does that fit? Yeah, that's perfect. But the point of the matter is for you to be aware. If I do this, you see somebody doing this, and you're questioning them. We call that closed. That means that I'm keeping in what I got in. Now you kind of hard time says, could you please take your hands down from your body? Okay, you can. But the point of the matter is what it is telling you is that that person is closing in off on you. Um, if the person is shaking their head left to right, that means usually no. Yes means up and down means yes in whatever language that they speak in. But if you do this, hunch the shoulders, you know. So I'm trying to show you how we have to watch the body language. Um, and we have to recognize, as it says, failure to recognize and understand body language signs can prove dangerous to anyone. Listening is an active process requiring a person to hear verbal cues and pay attention to nonverbal cues. Active listening, as I said before, very, very, very important. You can lose a whole lot with that. I had a student that told me once that they listened to their lecture while doing their laundry. First of all, I was like, what? You didn't say that. Well, you can't do that while you're in the classroom. So do you think that doing your laundry and listening to the lecture is productive for your listening skills? I don't think so. I don't think so. So you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. Barriers to communication that exist can break the interpersonal communication. Sometimes you have to be very careful, even taking your eyes off writing and stuff like that, um, getting too close to someone, invading their personal space, uh, and things of that nature. So ineffective communication includes losing credibility, violating the suspect's rights. Of course, you know that, leaving the information, factual information out, not letting the person complete their statement. Do you know that you can interrupt and throw off something that could turn your whole investigation? Think about it. So anyway, concluding with this, anyone working in criminal justice understand the importance of communicating with individuals. And you have individuals who have issues. We call those special populations, such as hearing or sight impaired individuals, individuals who have mental health issues or appear to be high on some substance or the other, or they don't understand the language uh, because you have a different culture or speak a different language. So the key thing is that you're going to have to be prepared to communicate. Remember, communication consists of uh, putting information out and receiving. So you present it, and then the person that you're trying to communicate with has to receive it. If you're on the phone talking to me, and you're not talking to me, but you're talking to someone else, or if you are not saying anything, nothing's happening. We're not communicating. So get that point across. And you have to be able to understand, finally, the last thing I'm going to say is that you can't be a good de-escalator if you're not a good communicator. Very important, because you have to deal with de-escalating situations uh, all the time. Okay. So here are some barriers that you'll run across to effective communication. Different languages, the emotional aspects of it, the environment you're in, you know, because you're questioning someone in a situation like they tried to raise that issue in the Derek Chauvin case, that the crowd was you know, loud and saying things, and as a professional that distracted Derek Chauvin from realizing that he had his knee on the person's neck. Not so. But you have to be ready to operate in those kind of stressful environments. Physical. issues that are involved as well. Um, Maybe um, it's a problem with reaching that person. Personal, perceptual, gender. Not every male can communicate with females in situations. So it is good to have a person of that gender and of that culture or race, even in some instances. Uh, so you have to be able to operate with all of those. So we have to deal with all these different factors in terms of communication, and recognizing that there is a possible physical barrier, which I was talking about a few minutes ago. Oftentimes, officers interview persons in an environment, like I said, where it's cold, hot, snowy, and you're trying to get a message, noise, and all other situations. An officer who has been in the military may address fellow officers in a rigid, formal manner, thereby making it difficult to communicate with them. So you have to remember the individual that you're communicating with may not be at the level that you are. Uh, Psychological barriers sometimes occur when officers are afraid or feel threatened. You have to be able to reach that person. Okay, no anxiety should be shown. Listening, we already talked about that a few minutes ago. Recognizing what's going on in terms of this uh, active listening. It says listening active, but it means active listening, to listen to citizens or any other person that you are questioning. Um, and it says to overcome this barrier, officers need to focus on the speaker. Don't interrupt them. I said that earlier. Ask questions to show you have listened. Take notes, nod, and address others. And oftentimes, when you're questioning an individual, and that's one of the things that if you look at this Joe Friday example I told you, you will discover using the name, because it draws that person into you. Calling them by their name, that kind of thing. It's a familial connection that comes about, and the person might be operating in a better fashion. I know all of you guys are familiar with good cop, bad cop, where the good cop is the one that's, you know, talking to the person in a manner. It's a trick, but it's still the point I'm saying is that sincerity in terms of questioning oftentimes will create more. Um, we always say that um, when you deal with someone wrath, you can't get it. But there's a old saying, and I can't remember how it went. It was something about um, honey, getting something with honey. But anyway, the point of the matter is that you want to be able to use a soft tone in a communication tone. Yelling and screaming at someone, they ain't gonna get it. It's not gonna get it. But listening is critical, because you're gonna take the information based on what you hear. Language, as we deal with individuals with various languages. One of the most popular languages that I tell students to understand is Spanish, because of the fact that you're going to have opportunities, you're going to deal with people that speak Spanish, and you need to have someone there to be able to interpret for you. Um, it, it is important for you to understand something. Um, One time it was suggested that we could utilize people there. Well, they may purposely interpret wrong what the person is saying. You don't know who it is. So it's good to have one of your own people to be able to do that. But bilingual people, people who speak English and Spanish, that are law enforcement, and especially in urban areas, they do very, very, very well. Mental disorders, you're going to run across individuals of course, we know about that from in our drugs and crime course, and that we should be aware of the fact that individuals are going to sometimes communicate with us because they have mental disorders. It may not be drugs, might not be alcohol, it's just a mental issue. More and more officers are being trained to be able to address individuals as they approach them that have mental disorders. Barriers to communication in disadvantaged communities. Okay, technology is there now. We have technology now. We can communicate much better now that we have technology, but some people don't have that. And the computers, the laptops, the tablets, even your phone here. I have a note section on my phone where I can take down information that I can utilize. But we also try to be sure that it's important for us to keep that information professional that we put on there. It says since over 65% of communication is nonverbal, it is important that officers understand how to read body language. We talked about that. Okay, we can move on from this. All right, so we understand there's things that are going to make it difficult, but I never use the word impossible. And so we come to the written communication again as we conclude. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I already did this. It talks about what I just said earlier at the beginning. And it talks about writing is the most important function. And notice we started out with it and we ended with it. That tells you the importance of it. And it says the last sentence here, you heard me basically say that. Okay, let me read it from the beginning. Although all reports are completed on computers, officers are still required to know correct wording, punctuation, capitalization, logical sequence, and grammar and sentence structure to avoid mistakes. Written reports, if not correctly done, can damage an officer's credibility, which we talked about. When defense attorneys sift through and find, did you hear what I said? Even the smallest error to plant seed of doubt in the jury. Those are mistakes. That's what we do. I'm telling you. All right. We can blow it out. And because of the fact that there are reports that is the written documentation or the crime incident, and the judge or jury has a chance to hear those, they have to be accurate. So now let's look at this area here. Criminal justice students in written communication, like personnel students throughout their college career spend a considerable amount of time involved in written communication. I don't have to tell you that must exhibit precise spelling, grammar, and punctuation and sentence structure. This skill should be fully developed by the time a student graduates and seeks employment. Employers are looking for that. Remember, one of our transferable skills is written and oral communication that you must be proficient in. Furthermore, studies show that graduates are expected to be able to work effectively in a team. Remember, we talked about teams as one of them, because there is a tendency, especially in private companies, for work to be done on projects, and each individual contributes to the building of the full case. I remember as a young lawyer in a big law firm, they had individuals who were responsible for various issues in the case and dealing with them. So the same applies to justice careers as you function in teams, probation, parole, detectives, forensic people, and so forth. And then example of an inconsistent police report, I won't have to go over this because we've already talked about these kinds of things. But remember, It is so important that you understand that. So that's it I got for now. Any questions? Any questions? Okay. Any ideas for the phrase or word? It's written right up here. I can. It's written. Oops, I said written, didn't I? Okay. Suggestion. You're too smart, Josh. Yes, that's it. Written communication. Written communications. Because I spent a whole lot of time on that. You know why? Because it's actually, as we say in the church, it's your alpha and your omega. Uh, I did give that one away. But didn't I? Or did I not spend most of the hour talking about written communication? That's it. So yeah, and the importance of it. So take that to heart and keep that as you know. Um, I always tell people put a sign up in front of wherever you're doing your writing. I must be a professional written and oral communicator, and writing and or written whatever way. The point of the matter is, it's so important. It's important. Um, I got these books. You got those chapters you read. You got the PowerPoints. You read stuff in the modules. You try to rely upon what they say in those words to help you get ideas and information. And that's what you're going to do. Okay. And the way that you get your grades is by written discussion posts as well as written assignments. Okay. Memory and notes, or do they have a recording of the reports so they can type it up later? Sometimes recording, you mean record, take a recording with your phone or something like that? Is that what you mean? Is that what you mean? Some kind of recording device utilizing that? Let me see, maybe if I went to the earlier part. Okay, hold on a second. I did have an off-topic question. Do officers write reports off of memory and notes, or do they have recording of the reports so they can type it later? Both. The key thing, remember, and that's a good question because if you're asking a question and you write, you can break up the questioning and the later responses. But if you're recording this information, you know, as notes for yourself. But one of the things that you're going to have to be aware of is a shrewd attorney, like I was as a defense attorney, would ask, did you record this information? Um, did you make a recording of the statement? Well, yeah, that could be valuable. But the key thing is if you're writing what the person is telling you and asking questions and responses, then that could be something that could be subpoenaed or either um, need to be produced. But yes, it can help you with terms of accuracy. The answer is yes. Okay, I've seen it done, but that's an excellent question. I think departments have policies on stuff like that too. So whatever the policy is of the department or agency that you're working for, they will probably let you know. But I would submit that when I started out, um, 89 to 93, we didn't do a lot of that because we didn't have our cell phones out and stuff like that. But now there's different. And then remember one other thing that you have now. Know what they have now that does that exactly what you just said? What is it? Cameras. You have body cams. You have um, dashboard cams. You have cameras in the neighborhoods. But those body cams and the volume that comes up on those things, that can do it. But almost everybody is recording stuff now these days. So, so I guess that kind of fits within what we're talking about. Okay. Anything else? But that's a good question. Anything else? Well, first of all, now long-term memory is something that a lot of people don't have. I'm fortunate. I do have a good one. And mine is a photographic memory, but most people don't have that. But if you're gifted with that, that's awesome. But the point of the matter is that yeah, the average person will have to do some of the things that we talked about. But yeah, body cams, I can't, you know, very, very important. So, well, all right, it's 8:05, and I've enjoyed this last hour communicating with you, and uh, hope that you have, as they say, been reminded of things that you should already know, and I know you already know. But as somebody once said, repetition is something that helps you a lot. When I was in law school, our professor said that uh, when you become a lawyer, you are a person who is repetitious and redundant, which is the same thing. So I live up to that. My wife reminds me of that. 27 years, almost 28 years. So anyway, that's a whole nother situation. So sometimes my students probably feel the same way. You don't have to answer that one, but you know what I mean. All right. Well, have a good week. Stay safe, and I'll see you next week. Have a good night.